Everyone. It's Greg Cohen at Pourmore. We're going to be on today with the guys from Black Market Spirits, talking about their rye out of California. Okay, we'll get them on here in just a second. There we go. Hey guys.
Right. Hello.
Hey guys.
We're figuring this out.
Well, thanks for joining us today. How about you guys do a quick intro of yourself for everyone who's following?
Yeah, my name's Casey. This is Ken here. So myself and a gentleman named Matt Frazier started the company, and Ken's our distiller. So pretty easy, but we can dive deeper on that as kind of the story of Black Market goes, you know.
Yeah, perfect. Where are you guys calling in from today?
So we are now based in San Luis Obispo. When we first started the company, we were in Santa Barbara, California. So want to just give a quick little brief overview of how it happened and all that?
Yeah, cool. You know, one of the things that we always like to talk about, we've all sat around a campfire and someone's got a bottle out and someone says, hey, we should start our own whiskey. And so everyone kind of laughs, but then no one ever does it. You know, no one ever goes that far. Some people make some spreadsheets and look at some projections or make a phone call, but you know, tell us how did you guys go from an idea from 0 to 1?
So definitely was an idea a very long time ago. Matt Frazier and myself back in Santa Barbara in our younger years, bartended for many years together, worked in the bar industry for a long time, and it was kind of that first when we were behind the bar saying, oh, we should create our own brand sometime. And it was one of those, you know, you're 21, 22, 23, thinking you could just make such a better brand, right? And how simple it must be to come
I
up
did
with
this,
a brand,
I do it this way.
Yeah. Because, you know, you're so knowledgeable. And we both went on and worked in the liquor industry for quite a while, both on bar side to, you know, our business cards still say bar back to the day because that's where I think everybody starts in the bar industry.
Right.
And we both went on and worked for one of the distributors out here in California. And Matt stayed on for another distributor, ended up working for Young's Market back when Young's was still around, and was running on-premise for Southern California. I was out doing some consulting on the East Coast for various liquor brands. And I mean, this is, call it a decade later, a phone call we had with each other, which was, you know, we're still in this liquor industry and we still haven't created a brand. What are we doing? And so we got together, and kind of the end of 2019 is when Black Market Spirits, you know, kicked off, you know, right before the pandemic. So
I was going to ask, you know, launching 2019 was a fun time to launch and probably a really scary time, although there was definitely a whiskey boom during the pandemic. So I'm curious how that played out for you guys.
For us, it was good and bad, right? Just like I think for a lot of businesses.
Sure.
It was fun and exciting up until the pandemic hit, and then it was like, oh, okay, we got to change here because our whole business strategy was actually focused on the on-premise. That's pretty much where we believe you build brands. And so our strategy was to build a new brand in the on-premise and get it known and liked before we really focused on the off-premise. That was what we were going to market with. And we very quickly had to change strategies, obviously, since all on-premise was closed, we had to figure it out. And fortunately, you know, I want to say like a pinky toe of experience compared to what Matt Frazier has in the liquor industry from working with a distributor for so long, and was really able to guide and keep the ship afloat during the pandemic, which I think that alone was a giant success. And then afterwards, that's where we just started focusing on different brands and different things. You know, we make obviously a handful of brands. We don't just deal in the whiskey world. So everything from our Hendry's vodka to Throwback Fernet to Clio Gin, Blind Burrow Rum, as well as, you know, a few others over there that I see on the shelf. But we just thought playing in a bunch of spirits is fun. And that strategy is probably what helped us the most, was because there was something for everyone, rather than just walking into any account and saying, I've got a whiskey for you, and they don't want a whiskey, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't want a whiskey. We've got 6 other things for them to choose from. So that was probably what helped us the most, kind of get through that little bit of the pandemic, and focus on moving forward. So.
So let's talk about, you guys had an idea. Sorry for the glitch there.
You're in the
Posting.
matrix, man. You're all good.
I was trying to post insights, and sure enough, I hit the button.
No worries.
So you had a vision for what the on-premise experience could be or should be. Can you talk a little bit about what elements of that still exist now versus what you kind of gave up over time?
No, tons of that exists now. You know, the on-premise is back and rocking. People are going out. People are drinking. Consumers are experiencing alcohol and different brands for the first time again. And I feel like a lot of consumers are looking for that true story, which, you know, we always believed in a ton of transparency behind our brands and where they come from and what we do. And I think that's helped us along the way because consumers are smarter than ever. You know, everything is out there. You know, there's no longer the secret of where stuff comes from or, you know, who made it. For us, it's paid dividends in just being authentic to who we are and ourselves. And, you know, I think it shines through on the brands. We really just made brands that we thought were fun, and that taste great and that weren't overpriced. And it was just the whole thing that going back to kind of that conversation you said, you know, around a fire, right? Was brands don't need to be overpriced to taste good. They can taste good and be craft and still be reasonably priced. And that was always our goal, and to have a fun story behind everything we were doing.
Yeah. So as you guys built the brand, how did Ken enter the mix? How did you guys come together to build this?
Yeah, so I met Ken rather recently, I'd say a few years. Matt's known Ken for probably almost a decade. And Ken was down distilling in San Diego. And when we were moving from Santa Barbara up to San Luis Obispo, we were looking for a new distiller. We're making a huge project up in San Luis Obispo, and we wanted somebody that could be hands-on full-time, where our previous distiller also had his brands, other brands. There's a lot going on, and we wanted someone that could be full-time, just focused on black market spirits. And Ken is insanely talented, disgustingly talented. I always laugh because I always thought I had a good palate until I taste something next to Ken, and then he tells me 10 more things that I missed, right? So that conversation started, a few years ago now at this point?
Yeah, I think so.
Of just what that would look like. Would he want to come on board and kind of lead the charge on black market spirits going forward into the future, you know, across multiple states and all that. Yeah.
Love that. All right, now the name. I love your logo. I love the logo with
Thank you.
the guy with the sunglasses. Where does the brand come from?
So the idea where we first started this brand, we tried to tie everything back into Prohibition a little bit, simply to tell the story of the Central Coast of California and Prohibition, a little bit of both, right? So every brand has something to do with the Prohibition. Like you look at our smuggler, his little tie in his coat is actually a silhouette of the whiskey bottle. So he's smuggling the whiskey bottle, but people look at it as a tie when you first look at it. There's a lot of little Easter eggs like that. But the idea was, how do we tell the story of the Central Coast? How do we build separate brands so that they can all stand on their own? Not just everything be called a black market vodka, black market this, right?
Sure.
So like, for instance, Hendry's Vodka. That comes from Hendry's Beach in Santa Barbara, which was famous during Prohibition for smuggling booze. They would float the booze into the beach, and then they'd kind of take it north. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Would they float bottles? How much volume
like
were
barrels
they floating onto the beach?
Yeah, barrels. Yeah, because it was actually buoyant. Yeah. And then like you've got Cleo Gin. So Cleo, the little picture of the woman on the bottle, is actually from a newspaper clipping. It's a real woman. Her name was Gertrude Lithgow, and everybody called her Cleo because she looked like Queen Cleopatra. And it was rumored, you know, because how can you prove it, that she smuggled more booze than the real McCoy did. but everybody talks about the real McCoy because back then no one suspected, a female
Right.
of really doing anything other than what they were told to do. And so we
It was the
thought it
best
was really
disguise.
important. Yeah, we
Yeah.
thought it was really important to tell her story. And so we did. So on the back of all of our bottles, it kind of tells that story. Blind Burrow rum goes back to speakeasies. Used to pay a little, 5 cents back then. You're going to go in and you're going to see this strange animal. That's where blind tiger, blind pig, all these things came from. Those were kind
Oh,
of
okay.
symbols of speakeasies. And so the beach in Santa Barbara that's Hendry's, the official name is Arroyo Burro. So we thought it was a fun little tie-in to do a blind burrow for our rum to kind of tie that all together. And then
Yeah.
Black Market Spirits really just came from the idea of that there's still to this day, you've got Prohibition, you've got all this underground kind of really cool culture around spirits. And the idea was that we were going to build, around that culture. So altogether, it's just Black Market Spirits,
Yeah.
staying kind of underground and true to who we are. And Matt and I both love whiskey. So we decided that all the whiskey gets the moniker Black Market,
Okay.
since that's kind of what we enjoy drinking the most. That and probably our throwback Fernet are what him
Yeah.
and I drink a little too often. So
So you guys pull whiskey from Kentucky, correct? You have a distillery partner there.
yeah. So what we did, we looked kind of all around for whiskey. We wanted it to be very true to who we were. And so we saw places that are very, I guess, call it manufactured factory-based whiskey, all the way to, of course, the very last one that we went to was at the time, it was called the O.Z. Tyler Distillery, which now it's the Green River Distillery, and
Oh,
Bardstown,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, Bardstown just bought them. And so when we had gone there, they had really just revamped the distillery. They're showing us pictures of what it had looked like over the last, 30, 40 years. And they had put, millions and millions of dollars into it, this venture capital company. And we're looking for a handful of partners. So they weren't looking to just be cranking out, private labels or anything
Yeah.
like that. For us, it was really important that we were involved in the whole process. We didn't want to just go buy a barrel of 3-year whiskey and throw it in a bottle. There's nothing wrong with that. It just isn't the, I guess, story that we wanted to tell.
Sure.
So when we went out there, met with them, tried various mash bills, picked our mash bill, and we started from the new fill process. So that's what we have. A 3-year whiskey obviously came out when we were 3 years old, and then we just turned 5. So we have a 5-year whiskey that's being released, and then it'll just continue to go from there. So we've got a bunch of whiskey with them, and we store it both out in Kentucky and here in San Luis Obispo. So a little bit of both.
Are you aging in California as well, or mostly
Yep,
aging in Kentucky?
both.
Okay.
Yep.
What would you say are the terrain differences between those that are aging West Coast versus those aging in Kentucky?
Well, we're slowly figuring out on how much of a difference it's actually making,
Okay.
based upon how long the barrels have been out here. I'd say, obviously in Kentucky, you're getting a lot more swings, I guess we'd say, in the heat,
Yeah.
whereas here on the Central Coast, it's pretty level. You get some dips
Yeah.
and some raises here and there. But yeah, not a ton of change here on our actual, I guess, aging process, right?
Yeah.
You have anything you want to add on that? That's more your world.
Yeah, I think as we delve deeper into some of the barrels, we'll find out more and more. There obviously have been a lot of nuances from barrel to barrel. Even within the 3-year, we've been cherry picking some really amazing 3 years, like we did for the Distiller's pick, for example. That even turned out better than a lot of the 5 years. So it's kind of hard to say. We've just been picking everything from a barrel to barrel basis.
Okay.
How they would blend together, how they'll taste, and you're getting a lot of nuances. We've opened up some barrels that have been stored in Santa Barbara and the Central Coast, as well as some of the ones in the that we've had from Kentucky. But I think until I get a large enough sample, we probably opened up a few dozen barrels already in the last couple months,
Yeah.
and we'll continue to do that. So I think as the sample size gets larger, we'll be able to better estimate, what that's done for our angel share, for the flavor differentials, and it also depends on where in the barrel that was housed in the different areas as well.
Totally.
Top of the rick house, the bottom of the rick house. I mean, you have varying degrees of humidity and various in different levels. So until we really gauge that with a larger sample, we won't be able to really say for sure.
And that's kind of just, it goes back to what we're doing, is that we like to have, alcohol's supposed to be fun, right? And so I think it's fun to be like, okay, this one was aged the whole time out in Kentucky. This one hit Santa Barbara. This one hit San Luis Obispo. Let's see what it did to it. You know,
I love that. I love that part about it.
It's just interesting and fun.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not an exact science. It's definitely we're open to having fun with it and seeing what we get. And I think Ken here will probably be making too many experimental whiskeys coming up. Just to have fun with.
Yeah.
That keeps interesting, right? Yeah. You're going to see what happened. So you guys hitched your wagon to rye. Talk to me about why you chose to go rye versus other directions.
Funny enough, I think we all just like rye. So it's not overcomplicated. Even when Matt and I will drink bourbon, we'd appreciate a higher rye bourbon, right? We just all.
I have a theory that bartenders love rye more than bourbon.
You could be right.
It seems every time I have this talk with someone who has a bartender background, they're like, you know what? But the rye cuts differently. Like it tastes. I have a theory. I'm gonna keep going to the theory, but I think bartenders prefer the rye over bourbon. I think it cuts differently in cocktails. I think it plays out in itself.
I think it actually balances out a cocktail better too, because you get that extra nuance on the finish of the extra spice.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get a cocktail, for example, with an old fashioned, it could fall a little flat because there's some sweetener, et cetera, in there with the sweetness of the bourbon. And that finish ends up finishing flat. Where with a rye, you can really kick up that extra nuance on that back end with that spice note, and it really completes that whole transition much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that nails it.
Yeah. It's like, don't get us wrong. Like, we love a good bourbon, but if you're going to pick one or the other, all of us just prefer a rye. So if you're going to make something, a lot of people would say, make what's for the market, but at the end of the day, we're making what's fun for us to drink as well.
Yeah, and there are already a lot of nuances you can develop with the ryes too, depending on the barrels, the duration in a barrel, the type of barrel, etc., the char levels, to really, if you want to add that extra bit of sweetness that you can find in a bourbon but still get that amazing rye characteristic, then you can get that from the barrel and the mash bill as well. And so, there are a lot of nuances to rye that go really underappreciated, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to selectively pick out barrels, or as we start bringing everything in house to really be able to add that extra nuance. And some will have some extra sweetness on the front end, some will just be really nice and heavy spices on the back, and so we'll be able to mess around with that, and that's the funnest part. So.
Yeah, love that. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the whiskey. We've talked about the rye. Can we jump into some of it? Can we taste a little bit so we can talk and kind of feel some of that tasting?
Absolutely. Sure. And I think Ken kind of gave it away, but we've got plenty of whiskey from that partnership. So now what we're doing is we're going to start making everything here from start to finish. So there will be, a true San Luis Obispo start to finish whiskey. Obviously, it's going to take some years.
Yeah.
But that is happening. So that is.
Are there other distilleries in your area?
Say that again.
Are there other distilleries in your area? Are you one of the only?
There's a ton of great distilleries on the Central Coast. Yeah, a whole
Central
bunch.
Coast, sure. Yeah. But in San Luis Obispo, is there Obispo, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a bunch. So you've got just I can throw a rock and probably hit a couple.
So you've got ecosystem there.
Yeah, it's great. A lot of good friends, a lot of great community. Everyone kind of doing the same thing and trying to build something fun.
Yeah.
So it's a fun area that there's a few others making some really good ryes out here, and it's just a great little town, great area, great community. But let's taste some rye.
All right.
What do you want to start with?
Where do you guys want to start?
We start with the 3-year, and then we'll work our way up and just taste the progression.
Yeah, I think this is what you're subscribed. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So for those of you who are part of the Pour More Whiskey of the Month Club, we sent out the 3-year Black Market Rye in September for one of our clubs. So for those of you who have it at home, you can take a look and try it on your own. I've got a fresh bottle here, so I'll pour it up and we can talk about it. Now, for those of you who aren't part of the club, this 3-year rye can be found out in the wild, right?
Yep. That's what we are distributed in California, Nevada, Texas, as well as, funny enough, this little place called Connecticut.
Okay.
Yep.
It's funny how the network makes its way around, and all of a sudden you can be there.
Yep.
That's what we love. So again, the reason Pour More exists is to help give people who can't find product some of the best whiskey out there. And we know you guys have won several awards in the past. We recruited you guys through one of our distributor partners, and so we're getting these products into people's hands across the country who otherwise couldn't go down the street to find it. And so hopefully we are helping expand the brand.
We appreciate it.
All right, so talk us through the 3-year, Ken.
Yeah, so the 3-year, so all the ryes have the same mash bill, so 95.5, 95 rye, 5% barley. You'll notice as you go through the transition of the different ages and how things are picked and that the barrel pickings and the selections, it really kind of wants and later on you can basically but anyway, for the 3-year, you'll get just you have some good sweetness on the nose. As you taste it, you get like a nice viscosity to it. You get the spice note on the finish. This on-premise works really well with a cocktail because you get that great spice note on the finish.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly light, and it's very oaky, right? Because it's a younger rye. It's a 3-year, but it has just a nice consistency to it. Finishes super clean, and you have that really nice sweetness on the nose. And you want
I'm getting some apple, right? And then get some apple, some more fruit. Yeah.
And when you do a side by side with this, you're going to notice with a 5-year, you'll get a lot more of the oakiness on it. With the age of the rye, and then as you get into the 5-year, which we'll do next, you get a lot of sweetness to it. A lot of the vanilla notes start to pop out more. The caramel notes start to pop out more on the 5-year with that added expansion and contraction. Now,
you're right. The lightness and the spicy.
Yeah.
That's why I love rye. Right. The rye, the spice comes through. This one's so going back to light and crisp. But it's almost got like a honey. That apple, that fruit is really sticking out for me. I don't know why today.
It's easy to drink. It's super sippable, and it has a little bit of caramel essence to it as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's very good. So if you were going to be crafting a cocktail around the 3-year rye, what kind of cocktails do you favor for this?
Well, usually my cocktails consist of a glass.
Yep.
Typically drink, and so that's how I taste everything. And so for me, the key is to make sure that everything stands out on its own, first of all, and you want to make sure that because if it stands out on its own first, then it's going to be great in a cocktail. You're not trying to mask some underlying off flavors, etc. There are no off flavors in this rye. It's just very clean. It's got some body to it where, I found that some ryes have a tendency to be really hollow in the center where you're not getting anything in that, as it hits your palate. You get a great spice note in a cocktail, but it's not good to just drink on its own. This has a great mouthfeel to it. It's got some body, so you can actually enjoy it on its own or on a rock, however way you want to do it. My typical go-to for a cocktail is to, have an old-fashioned. If I'm having an old-fashioned, and it's always a rye old-fashioned. I need that extra when you're adding the orange bitters or walnut bitters, whatever you prefer to use, and then the simple added to it as well, you end up getting a little bit of it just becomes too sweet when with a bourbon, from my perspective, which is why I love using that rye, because you get that extra.
That's how I've always felt. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ken, when you're thieving out of the barrel, when you're tasting something, you're going to see, is it ready? Is it good? Is it the best? Is it good? What are the things that you're like? Give us one or two notes you're looking for that when you get them, you're like, oh, this is better than everything else I'm trying
So
right now.
so right away on the nose, you could tell when I smell on the nose for the bouquet, I like to get some sweetness in it. And the reason I like to get the sweetness in it is that you had a lot of contraction expansion in the barrel, so it's pushing out a lot of the caramel, a lot of vanilla notes into the spirit itself. And so it's had a lot of contraction expansion. The barrel did its job, just kind of squeezing and pushing all that beautiful flavor into the
Yeah.
spirit. And so that is hugely important. So right away on the nose, a lot of times you could tell how well it's going to turn out. And there's always that kind of linear consistency to that. And then on the flavor profile, I do like to make sure that you get some of that, because you're already going to get the spice from the rye grain itself.
Yeah.
And so I like to get a little bit of almost like a honeyness to it. I think it adds just a tad of sweetness on that front end that kind of carries through, but it balances out really well with that spice on the finish. And I like a richness to it. And that kind of also goes back to a barrel's doing its job well when you get a lot more richness to it.
Yeah.
I like to have some body to it. I don't like a really hollow, spirit, because I like to have that body. I want to be able to let it linger on the palate and really kind of taste that, because when I'm going through spirits in general, I really take like a culinary approach to everything. The way it smells, the way it tastes, the way it hits your palate, the way it blends in, the way it sits. It all makes a big difference, because I believe in that full experience from start to finish. And then and I always like to surprise people on that finish. You get all that beautiful spice that you want out of a rye.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that you're making, you want to get that lingering, nice flavor profile, but you also want it to be surprisingly clean and smooth, so that they're always surprised at the proof that you have on that.
I
And
do love that when you have a really high proof and someone's like, oh, I can't drink that.
yes,
And you give it to them anyway, and they're like, oh, that doesn't taste like 95 or 100,
Oh, yeah.
and you're like, oh no,
exactly.
some of these hit just
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Exactly, and when you get to the cask strength, you're going to find that same surprise too. It's just
Right.
beautiful flavor profile, but I think that whole experience kind of goes well, and it always starts with the nose. You could tell a lot from the bouquet. Just like anything else, like when you're cooking, you could tell if something doesn't smell right or whatever. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, great. Should we go on to the 5-year?
yes, the 5-year.
So this guy, currently in the states that I previously mentioned, so California, Nevada, Texas, Connecticut, it is available in the on-premise. We will be launching it in the off-premise, so all your retail stores, in the new year. So in January, that'll be available in the off-premise.
Okay.
I will let Ken do to explain it.
When you say on premise in those other states, do you mean just at like a bar or
Yep.
a restaurant?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
So the 5-year is, this was just a great project. Just being able to crack these guys open after 5 years, it was just really special. Casey was there, the two of us for our very first barrel cracking, and he can attest to the fact of how different each barrel can actually be, even at 5 years. And so when you go through the 5-year, you'll notice right away that you're going to have a lot more sweetness to it, right? And that kind of goes back to what you mentioned. It's more time in a barrel, but that's not always the case, because I found 3-year barrels that actually are even sweeter than some of the 5 years. It really depends on where that's at, and it depends on the barrel itself, where it's at in what distillery or what part of the rickhouse, the contraction expansion, the heat, the
Yes.
so many different factors, and you'll be surprised at how nuanced every barrel actually is from the next. And so this 5-year, right away, you can smell even some honey notes on the front end of that. It smells a little sweeter. You could tell right away that it's going to be a richer
It's way more
Yeah,
developed. Yeah, way more complex. Yes.
yeah. You'll get more of the complexity in there, and
And it's the exact same stuff, right? Just the
it's
exact same.
it's the exact same stuff, and it's also
Yeah.
98 proof, so it's a higher proof.
Yeah.
Yet it comes out just, I mean, it just has a beautiful, richness to it, and it just, and you get a little bit of that sweetness, but you still get that great spicy finish on there.
I feel like I'm getting definitely like more of a coffee taste, and there's
Yeah,
more smoke on here for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And maybe a little bit more caramel notes in that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's much of a longer fade, right? The other
yes,
one was
yeah.
sweet and kind of then
Which,
dissipated. This one is lingering more, and I can feel it.
yes, and there's more body to the
Yeah.
and richness to the palate.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that one in a cocktail. This is like you sit out
Oh,
and you hang out
yeah,
with this one for sure.
yeah. I mean, this is one that even bourbon drinkers would really appreciate, because you get that
Yeah.
a lot of the sweetness that a bourbon drinker would want, but you still get all that beautiful spice note and complexity to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could drink this neat so very easily and just have a very good night with it.
Now, so these, we don't know whether these were Kentucky or California aged, right? Or do you
Yeah.
batch them?
So this particular batch for the 5 year that you're tasting was primarily stored in the Central Coast, actually.
Okay. Okay.
But it did sit in Kentucky first for most of its maturation.
Yeah.
And then we had a stock of barrels in the Central Coast, which we cracked open first. And you'd be surprised, like some of the barrels just did not work out. We didn't do anything with those. And that's where we get very selective. We want to make sure that we have a really great product.
So if that happens, so if you crack one open, you're like, this doesn't fit it. Do you put it back in storage? Do you sell it off to somebody else? What happens with that?
So we have a couple that we just recorked and let it sit and just thought, okay, well, we'll try this in another couple of years and see if it gets any better.
So in those cases, let's ask the opposite of the question I asked before.
Yeah.
When you open it up, what are the one or two things you're looking for when you go, oh, this needs more time?
Well, the flavor profile is vastly different, right? And again, it kind of starts with the nose. You could tell that you didn't get enough of the contraction expansion just off the nose itself. When you sip it, it's going to have a completely different viscosity relative to anything else at that same maturation level. And so the mouthfeel, the lack of the richness, and then obviously the flavor just becomes real flat. One barrel stands out in particular where I tasted it and I thought it was more of a 9-month bourbon than it was a 5 year.
It never got there.
It just never
felt
got
like it. So
there.
when you put it back and you recork it, will you shift it in the rickhouse somewhere else to try to?
You just keep it separate from the rest of the batches, because we don't want to mix it up.
You mark it as sort of like it's on probation.
Yeah, it's definitely on probation. It's taking
definitely probation. That's a really good one. Now, so you guys don't. There's a designation for straight rye, right? And you guys don't have the straight rye. Okay.
These are all straight rye. So the definition of a straight rye is anything barreled over 2 years.
Okay.
And
that's what I thought. Right.
These are actually, everything that we have is a straight rye.
Gotcha.
We just don't have it marked on the label as such.
Yeah. Well, that one's good. All right, now we're going to the black label, the most secret of the black labels.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a distiller's pick. It will be released coming probably within the next 2 weeks, but we're only releasing it for retail sales out of our distillery in San Luis Obispo, simply because we're going to do these releases from time to time when it's really just indicative of when Ken pulls a barrel and says, that's an amazing single barrel, and just says, this is getting bottled, like done deal. Yeah. So it'll be very limited. I mean, as you see, it's barrel number 1, bottle number, whichever one you got. And
117.
Yeah. So
guys, this is a cool bottle. Like just the look of it. I mean, what is this? What is the material? What is this?
So it's just the coating that we put on the bottles.
Okay.
That we have put on. So it's a matte black coating. It's actually, which is kind of neat about it, it is UV proof. So even if that bottle somehow gets left in the sun, which hopefully it never does,
Right.
the whiskey won't have any degradation. But yeah, so we'll release this out of our distillery. We'll put a big kind of announcement when people can kind of line up and get those. And price TBD. So that's all still getting figured out. This is a very, very fresh brand that we issue. I actually, Matt and I were doing a spirits dinner the other night, and we brought it to the spirits dinner as a little surprise. And the funny part was, we tasted it for the first time with 30 other people. And Ken had been the only one that had tasted it because it's the distiller's pick. Single barrel and cask strength, and we're going to continue to do those
That's a little nerve-wracking.
as kind of like fun little barrels pop up. So
now, when you bring that for a dinner like that, were you going for a pairing, or was this more of a like let's just showcase?
no, it was a 5-course pairing dinner that we were a part of. So they had taken our different brands. So we make a organic vodka called Kaya. And that was used as the welcome cocktail as well as infused with the appetizers. And then from there it went to our gin, which was infused with whatever that meal was, as well as a cocktail and a tasting. And we talked through the tasting and kind of walk everyone through that meal. And then when they thought the meal was over and there's nothing else on the list, we actually still had this kind of bottle hidden in the back, brought it out for everyone because it was relatively local, only about an hour away from us. And we wanted to kind of treat the locals that had.
This was the encore.
Yeah, said, hey, check out what we're doing, and this is our little secret project that is now no longer a secret. So
yeah. All right.
Okay, so this distiller's pick is it actually came out a little bit lower proof than I typically expect it to. It came out at 110, but this is a perfect example and kind of showcases what can happen even with the same age of a spirit, a barrel, and how differently nuanced every barrel is. When going through the barrels, it really was a standout. And so, and this was one of, every now and then you'll find a barrel that's just such a standout that you don't want to miss anything. And as I was going through the 3 years, this barrel was a great standout, and it just, and it had so much, the complexity involved with this barrel was like even better than some of the 5 years that I was pulling up. And so, you just get that beautiful, the nose on it, the nose on it has
There's so much going on.
Of an older, it's like it's of an older, of an older bourbon or older rye, I should say. And so, and then when you taste it,
5 year,
it's a 3 year, believe it or not. And that's what I was saying, like, what you can get from the, some 3 years turned out better than some 5 years. And to maintain this at cask strength when it really just tasted so good just straight out of the barrel. That was, as soon as you took that cork off, that bung off of that barrel, you knew right away when when you took in that bouquet, like how good it was going to be. And
and just like the progression, this one sits, this one hangs out.
Oh yeah,
it's like dancing. It's like it's so much flavor going.
Oh yeah,
on.
yeah. And it just has just a lot of good. You can almost chew on it. It's got some good body on it, and just finishes is super. And especially for a higher proof to still have all that, it's just really, really nice. And then it finishes just so it's just so easy drinking.
This is fantastic. So how many bottles of this will you end up having?
I think we ended up with a little less than 200 bottles.
Yes, just under 200.
Yeah.
Okay. And what will this retail for?
That is TBD.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Oh, this is really good.
yeah, but I just love.
You don't
I love
find
being
much
able
like
to
this.
showcase how different you can flavor profiles you can get from the same, and that's why I always tell people to be careful of age statements on anything. It doesn't always say how good something is. It's the juice that you put into the barrel. It's how well that particular person either blended it or hand selected barrels. There are a lot of nuances involved. You can't just take any barrel and just say, okay, let's just dump it all in there. You gotta taste through it, make sure that they're gonna meld well together, and just create the best spirit.
Now, what I love here in your line is it's all the same material, right? It's not like you have
Yeah.
different, it's all the same stuff that just hit different. I mean, it just shows the complexity of doing single barrel work, but also to your point, like we don't have to be super complicated. We're just going to let it sit and
Right.
develop and bring things out and then find them when it's ready to go. I mean, it's a great expression of the same material, just different places in the house and where it aged. It's almost this is like a science experiment. This is like a different hypothesis about how it will change
Oh,
flavor in each different
yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to find that I mean, I have a very kind of OCD quality to everything when it comes to either hand selecting barrels or spending 6 months just on finding the right yeast. I mean, it just, all of it matters, and it just plays such a big factor and role and from production from start to finish.
In this process, again, going from idea to execution to now where you've got 3 year, 5 year distillers picks, what do you think is what was the biggest mistake that you all learned from over the last 5 year journey that you can remember back fondly as a learning opportunity?
I mean, from my from
I'm
my
like, oh.
so I've been distilling for over 10 years, right? And I think it's just a matter of from my experience, it's having everybody on board with the same vision, the same commitment, and understanding of how things should be. We're all in agree with each other and on the same page of making sure that we are picking number one, we're picking out the right spirits that all of us can agree to, the process, the execution, being able to get. I mean, it's just a great group of guys,
Yeah,
and we're all on the same page, because there's always that element of it that is a business element of things as well, right? And so,
sure.
and being able to get along and everybody be on the same page with the same goal is surprisingly more difficult than it might seem.
Yeah. All right. So my last
Yeah, like,
question. Oh
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, really, I mean, I think mistakes are always going to happen, and we've, with us starting the company pre-COVID, I think that set at least us up very well to just navigate any issues that come up. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's just business, and there's always going to be an issue, right? Like whether it's the vacuum cleaner doesn't work in the distillery to your
Yep.
still goes down. There's always going to be an issue. From a global pandemic scale, hopefully we'll never see anything worse than that,
Hopefully,
right?
get just one of those.
Yeah. So, and at the end of the day, when you sit back and think about the scale of what we're doing, we're making alcohol, and everyone just needs to relax and have a good time. And that's really what we try and convey around here with all the guys, all the girls, all the folks that work with us, for us, is just to convey we're here to have a good time and be honest, be transparent, and say this is what we're doing, this is what we're making, and hopefully people want to be a part of it.
Amazing. So the last question I always ask: when you're not drinking your stuff and you're drinking someone else's, what is your whiskey or drink of choice?
I always drink my stuff. I mean, I'm not even, I wish I could say otherwise, but I always prefer to drink my stuff because, I know what I'm going to get. I know that, it's exactly how I like to have it. And as I said, I typically drink, things neat. I mean, I had, after, I mean, even last night, as I was watching some games and doing getting some work done, by my side was this guy right here.
Yeah.
And so it was just, it's a lot more enjoyable to me. If you prefer somebody else's over years, then you're probably not doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give a slightly different answer. Only because obviously our spirits aren't available everywhere. So at times you'll be somewhere that, our spirits aren't available.
Right.
And so I think of it as kind of like the easiest way to cheat on myself is to drink something we don't have yet.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'll usually drink like an agave spirit, whether it's a mezcal or a tequila, or wine. I love wine, so drink wine at home typically if I'm at home. But yeah, like, do you want actual brands or just spirits?
Yeah, give me a brand. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think a great brand right now in tequila that's on the up and up. I don't know if it goes by Haha or Jaja, but
Okay.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
which way you're supposed to say it. Um, but that's a great brand. I mean, it's a great tequila, and I like what they're doing. I like the company. I like the branding. And
Yeah.
I'm a big sucker for branding. So I think they're doing a great job. That's one, if I'm in a bar, I'm grabbing that Blanco and it's going in a margarita. If our
Yeah.
stuff doesn't happen to be there, I'll just have a simple margarita. Or the other one is like, I love La Luna Chino Mezcal. So I'll do a Mezcal Negroni with that.
What was that one?
La Luna Chino.
La Luna. La Luna. Okay.
Yeah. But those are just a couple fun agave brands that, I like until we have our own tequila.
Is that on the roadmap?
There's whispers of it. We'll see. There's rumors.
Yeah. Well, let us
So,
know if those rumors come true. We'd love to try it out and send it out to our mezcal club, our tequila club.
yeah. We like to make things that are fun. So
Yeah.
we're experimenting as much as we can with lots of fun stuff, and we'll see how some things turn out.
Perfect. Well, Casey and Ken, I really appreciate your time today. Glad we got to showcase Black Market Spirits and talk through all the great products you guys are running. Thank you for sending these bottles. This one in particular was
Awesome.
incredible. So if you find it out in the wild, definitely buy it. Yeah, so we'll be in touch later. And again, for those of you who are looking to sign up, Pour More has monthly spirits for whiskey, bourbon, scotch, tequila, mezcal, and rum. So check us out.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.